Caution: this game contains scenes of violence and gore, as well as depictions of criminal acts. These acts are strictly punished by law. Please do not attempt to imitate them. This game also contains themes of sexual violence and self harm. This game is a work of fiction. Any relationship to real persons, groups, places, or crimes is coincidental.
I felt bad about turning Nisumi-kun down, since he seemed so excited about it, but I really did not want to go. But even though I was trying my hardest to refuse, he just wasn't listening.
Maybe we'll even see the murderer. They say the criminal always returns to the scene of the crime, right? Maybe she'd pick you as her next victim. To atone for your sins, you must die. You know, that kind of thing. As for your sins, being a shut in.
Hmm. I felt like it should have been obvious to him how much I didn't want to go and see a puddle of blood and gore. It would have been way too much for me. It wouldn't be like a haunted house or a horror movie or something. People had actually died in real life, and the killer was still on the loose. So, wherever the murderer was likely to be, I'd have liked to be anywhere but there. Still, I was curious. What could have possibly been the killer's motive? Were they just a psychopath that committed crimes for the hell of it? That was probably the most reasonable explanation. Well, whatever, it didn't really matter to me. I mean, I was a serial killer too. And even though I'd killed hundreds, people still treated me like a hero. That was in ESO, though. Just goes to show how much better the 2D world is. Anyway, as I tried my hardest to turn down Misumi-kun's proposal, I imagined myself like a brawler straight out of some fighting game. A psycho killer? Heh, if I ran into a guy like that, I'd turn into mincemeat. In my delusions, I could kill or spare anyone I wanted. But the people who actually tried to live out those sorts of delusions were idiots. Didn't they know that real life actions had real life consequences? Even the Nugent killer would have been caught eventually, and then they'd rot in prison for years, decades, even just waiting to be sent to the gallows. If I could say one thing to them, it'd be, what a pity. You really should have just kept your delusions to yourself. I went out to buy myself some dinner. I took the road I always used to get to my local convenience store. It was only a 3-minute walk from my base. I'd walked down this dirty alley more times than I could count, but for some reason, walking through it today, I couldn't help but feel as if I'd stepped into another world. The alley was the same as ever, but it felt like it was the first time I'd ever set foot in it. Familiar yet new, like the opposite of deja vu. I'd researched the phenomenon online before. The name for it was apparently jamais vu. What's more, the stench of rotting garbage was lingering in the air. The moisture in the atmosphere was so thick that if I hadn't known any better, I'd have assumed that it had just been raining. The air was like syrup on my skin. I heard a sound, the faint sound of something dragging across the ground. I stopped in my tracks and listened closely. It sounded like it was coming from up ahead, and somewhere down the alley and around the corner. Without any streetlights or lit up windows, it was pitch black down there. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't see a thing. It was strange. This was modern day Shibuya, a place that, along with Shinjuku, was known as the Japanese city that never sleeps. So how could there still be places that were this dark? It's almost felt like the entrance to a haunted house. Actually, there was one very large distinction. This darkness wasn't man-made. It was real. I didn't want to go any farther. Nothing good would come from it. My brain set off every alarm bell it could, trying to prevent my body from taking another step. But for some inexplicable reason, my body stepped forward anyway, as if drawn to that repeating sound. My fear urged me to stop, that something horrible would happen if I kept going. My heart started racing. My forehead was slick with sweat. Suddenly, a noise that was beautiful yet somehow discordant at the same time reached my ears. A voice garbled by static. Before I knew it, someone had grabbed my forearm. It was all too sudden. I panicked and tried to scream for help, but all that came out was a puff of air. Terrified, I tried to force my body to run away, but it wouldn't listen. I couldn't move an inch. I looked toward my arm. The hand of the thing that grabbed me came into view. It was dark green with skin taut like a mummy's. Countless veins protruded from the surface. It didn't look alive. To be honest, it made sense that I couldn't move. Going all deer in headlights was a natural reaction to what was happening. What was surprising to me, though, was that the voice in my ear was so soothing. The fear swelling inside of me was starting to vanish. A serious yet gentle voice. I slowly looked over my shoulder. The first thing I noticed was the Suime Academy emblem, the same emblem you could find sewn onto the chest of each and every Suime uniform. Then I noticed that the person wearing the skirt meant she was wearing a skirt meant she was a girl. But I didn't have the courage to look at the most important part, her face. She was standing way closer than I was expecting, so I couldn't bring myself to face her. I couldn't put my finger on why, but for some reason something seemed off, so I turned my attention back toward her hand. The hand gripping my arm was delicate and feminine, even though just a moment ago I had seen it as green and grotesque. This girl, who was she? What kind of expression was on her face? What kind of expression was she making at me? What was she doing here? I had no idea why, but for some reason, it felt like I knew her. Well, while staring at the pale hand wrapped around my arm, I tried to envision what she looked like. In my delusion, she has a ribbon in her hair, is wearing glasses, is wearing over-the-knee socks, is wearing a long skirt, is making some sort of salute at me. In spite of all my questions, I couldn't manage to get a single word out. I simply hung my head in silence. At some point, the dragging sound had stopped, and in its place, there was a smell coming from her body. The stench of blood. The light of the sunset bathed the hospital room in a vibrant orange. All was silent, as if time itself had stopped. Only a single person was present, completely still, as if asleep, sat a boy in a wheelchair. It was around the time of day when one would find nurses rushing around the hospital, serving patients their dinner, yet no such signs of activity made their way to the room. A moment later, the silence was broken by the sound of a door opening. A lone girl entered the room. The boy in the wheelchair lifted his head to acknowledge her, but did not speak. For a moment, the girl hesitated at the entrance. Looking around the room, she could sense a faint aura of loneliness emanating from it. The drab-looking room was minimal in size and reeked of disinfectant. This was where the two of them spent their days, an isolated location, eternally unknown to the rest of humanity. Not a single soul, be they doctor, nurse, friend, or relative, ever came to visit. The boy and girl rarely exchanged words with one another. The boy had been hospitalized, and for a whole year had been comatose. Only just a month ago had he awoken. The girl had been essentially using his room as a place to stay. However, as much as she did trust him, the relationship had nothing to do with any sort of romantic or sexual attraction. Her only goal was to repay her debt to the boy. Nothing more, nothing less. The boy was intentionally cold and distant, having even told her not to return once before. Yet all the same, she remained. This was in part because she had nowhere else to go. During his coma, she had been his lone caretaker. The couch in the room had become her bed, and even now, after he had awoken, she still used it as such. I brought you something to eat. She spoke with a warmth and sincerity as he held out a bag of food she had brought from a convenience store. Her words scared away the static atmosphere and breathed new life into the dead world that surrounded them. The girl surrendered herself to such an illusion, but did not mention this to the boy as she laid several kinds of bread atop the empty bed. Hey, this has been on my mind for a while now, but is food like this enough to keep you healthy? I don't have much time left as it is. Regardless, I'm sorry for sending you out to buy these. It's all right, really. I got some food for myself too, so don't worry about it. She forced herself to smile at the boy. Then, taking an egg sandwich for herself, she moved toward the window. Upon opening the window, the crisp autumn breeze permeated the quiet hospital room. Comfortably greeted by the wind, the girl narrowed her eyes and perched nimbly on the window sill. The room was located considerably high up. Imaginably, falling would mean certain death. This, however, hardly mattered to the girl, who simply took a hearty bite out of her sandwich. The boy in the wheelchair paid her no heed. He did not even attempt to reach for the bread laid out on the bed. Listen, I need to ask you again. Are you really going to try to awaken him? I am. The chat the two of us had yesterday made that very clear to me. Nozomi has been keeping an eye on him, and Natsu is completing. We must make haste. No matter what it takes? That's right. But that makes us no better than Nozomi, scaring him, pushing him to the edge. He's all we have. But if he awakens, you'll die. I've been prepared for that from the very beginning. My death is suitable punishment for shoving all my responsibilities onto him. The girl kept her gaze focused on the setting sun, not daring to look over her shoulder at the boy. Her countenance laid her emotions bare. She looked as if she might burst into tears at any moment. Could embracing him be an option? If that were to happen, I would not hesitate to put myself through another year-long coma so I could create another me, perhaps even longer. By the time I would succeed, Noatsu will have long been completed, an event that shall cast the world in despair. Despite his gentle tone, his words were laced with a touch of cynicism. Upon hearing them, the girl couldn't help but let out a sigh. I can't support the way you're going about this. We cannot allow Noatsu to complete. I know we can't, but putting myself in his shoes, it's just so sad. And there's no way I could just stand around and wait while watch you kill yourself. Doing nothing of the sort. I'll take care of it. The boy finally moved a little, taken aback by the girl's abrupt yet resolute words. What exactly do you mean by that? Finishing off the last of her sandwich, she stepped down from the windowsill, then turned to face him. Then, for some inexplicable reason, she snapped into a pose resembling that of a salute. I swear to protect him from Nozomi. That way, he won't have to die. But that negates the very reason he was created. Doesn't solve anything. Noatsu. I'll take care of Noatsu as well. That just isn't something you can handle. I've already made up my mind. I won't let you do what you plan to do. I'm going to protect you. She gave him a frail, yet tender smile. At the sight of this, the boy lost any and all words he had. You predicted there would be another incident today, right? It isn't just a prediction, it's an absolute fact. I have seen their delusion myself. If that's true, then I can't let him get involved. I'll be going now. She approached the door. Even if you interfere, I will still force him to awaken as planned. As she opened the door the final time, hearing the boy's words directed at her back, she paused for one final time. No signs of life came from the hallway. Not a single human being was in sight. Not a single sound reached the room. Hey, just what are we exactly? The two of us have been here for over a year. Almost nobody even knows we exist. Being here, I can't help but feel like my existence is nothing more than an illusion or something. I think this hospital's gloominess is getting to my head. Rimi, you shouldn't get involved. Despite the boy's pleading, the girl did not look back. Make sure to eat the bread I got you, okay? After murmuring those last few words, the girl left the hospital room. She, too, had heard that sound. Before, there had been a strange whirring sound, like something tearing its way through the air. Soon after she heard it, she discovered its origin, a rucksack worn by a nearby suspicious person. When she attempted to pursue them, however, they escaped. That was when she heard another sound echoing in the distance, the shrill sound of stakes being nailed into a wall. And though faint, the whirring sound from the floor could still be heard as well. Two sounds resonated in grating harmony, creating the illusion that her ears may start bleeding at any moment. Am I too late? Lightly biting her lip, she sprinted toward the source of the sound, and there her eyes landed upon a corpse, affixed to the wall by several cross-shaped stakes. Startled, she surveyed her surroundings. She couldn't let Nishijo Takumi see this place. She couldn't let him be consumed by fear. Where could he be? With that on her mind, she returned her gaze to the corpse. Oh, ew. I gotta censor that. She was at a loss for words. She had only looked away for a second, and yet in that short time, countless stakes had gruesomely mutated the corpse. Just a moment ago, there had only been a few stakes on the wall, let alone to suspend the corpse in midair. There hadn't been any external injuries, let alone blood. But now a grisly spectacle lay before her eyes. The sight of it left her reeling in horror, frantically fighting to endure her nausea. Her vision distorted as uncertainty seized her heart. Is a delusion eroding reality? In that moment, the girl came to notice that the changes did not end there. Her clothes were different. She was wearing a uniform unfamiliar to her, from a school she didn't recognize. In addition, her body was stained with crimson, and in her hand was a stake. No. Is this a delusion synchro? Someone's delusion had edited the scene around her. The gruesome corpse, her clothes, the rich scarlet blood. Was any of it real? No. It couldn't possibly be real. There was no stench of blood. She couldn't feel the icy chill of the metal stake in her hand. She put her hand to her bloody cheek and it came away dry. She carefully reached for one of the stakes planted in the body. When she tried to grab it, her hand grasped nothing but air. Everything was a delusion. A far, far too vivid delusion. But at any moment the delusion could become reality. It had already taken form. Once real booted, it would merge with reality. What was she to do? The girl was overtaken by doubt. A delusional space like this, oozing negativity, was well beyond anything she was used to dealing with. Such a powerful deluder may have already taken Nishijo Takumi's life. She might suddenly find Takumi pinned to the wall in the man's place. At this point, it would not even surprise her. Driven by anxiety, she let out a soft cry, right at that moment. The picture, Shogun sent. The terrified scream of a boy resounded from behind her. At first, she seemed shocked, but her expression quickly changed to a somber smile, and then, thank goodness. She softly whispered those words. Thank goodness? Thank goodness for what? And why was she smiling at me? I didn't understand. The questions kept piling up to the point where it sent a chill down my spine. Now panicking, I tried averting my eyes. The first thing that came to mind was, I don't want anything to do with this. I mean, for starters, I could hardly make eye contact with regular girls, let alone psycho killers, and the police would be here soon, and I was hungry. That's why I should just go home. Yeah, I need to get out of here, as fast as humanly possible. If I don't, I'll go insane. Taku. Uh? Suddenly she called me by name, even though I never told her my name, even though I never even met her before. I was looking for you. As she looked at me, her lips twisted into a horrifically fearsome smile, almost like she was a demon. Screaming at the top of my lungs, I ran as fast as my legs could carry me. It hurt to breathe, but I didn't care. I just kept screaming and running as if my life depended on it. At one point along the way, I turned my head to look behind me, but she didn't seem to be chasing me. The vast majority of the nurses at Yoyogi's General Hospital were making out their rounds. Only one could still be found sitting alone at the nurse's station. She stared at a laptop with a deadpan expression on her face. Despite not being on break, she was in the middle of a phone call. It did not seem to matter to her in the slightest that she was violating her work policy on cell phone usage. Reflected in her blank eyes was a certain chat log, shining brightly on the computer screen before her. Oh, there he is. Nishijo Takumi. You sure it's him? Most likely. Speaking on the other end of the call was a man. It was clear from how they spoke to one another that the conversation had nothing to do with work. He's not using his real name, though. Just his online handle. But he did know about the formula. I'll copy everything and send it over. With a mechanical flick of her wrist, the nurse moved the mouse with the intention of copying the log. However, she suddenly secretly stopped, and her breath followed. What on earth? Something wrong? The nurse ignored the man's question, narrowing her eyes as she brought her face closer to the screen. The screen still displayed the chat logs, however something seemed different from a few seconds prior. Something had changed, and a possibility, considering they were logs and not real-time conversations. And yet, even though everything had felt perfectly normal a moment ago, something felt incredibly out of place now. The timestamps, they changed. What do you mean? The man understood how absurd her claim was, and the voice on the other end of the call became much lower. It was perfectly normal just a second ago. What on earth is going on? Chill out. We're dealing with a gigalomaniac. And a monster one at that. So they were tampered with then? Looks like they didn't want us knowing who they really are. This whole timestamp deal makes it look like he's putting on a one-man show. Looking at it that way, maybe that's the goal. They turned reality into a delusion. Keep an eye out, Shino. It seems they're watching your every move, motherfucker. Suddenly, a sense of uneasiness crept up the back of Shino's neck. Covering her nape with her hand, she turned to face the source of the gaze, but there was nobody there. Not a single soul could be found within the nurse's station. May the divine light save us. Shino murmured those words of prayer to herself, hoping they would sweep the fear away.
I am cold. I am cold and I am sleepy. And sitting here staring instead of talking is not helping. I'm starting to get the auditory hallucinations because I'm so fucking sleepy. And I'm hearing people that aren't there. Except for my cat, he's called me. Oh shit! There's a fucking intermission.
I almost fell asleep there. Sakihata Rimi remained expressionless as she moved forward. She was walking down one of Suimei Academy's many hallways, this one lined with classrooms for second-year students. She was not accustomed to wearing a uniform, as this was her first time setting foot in this place. She paid no mind to all the other students in her vicinity. However, her apparent composure was a mere facade, one intended to desperately conceal a boiling pot of unease within her. Her somewhat awkward march through the halls betrayed this, but as she proceeded toward her destination, she kept her head held high at all times. Soon enough, she reached room 2C. This is the place? She already knew the answer. It was Nishijo Takumi's class. She placed her hand on the closed door. Only then did she realize that her fingers were trembling. Under normal circumstances, I would have loved to come here. Such a desire crossed her mind for a moment, but she stopped her illusions from progressing any further. After taking a small break, she vigorously slid the door open. Her stoic expression faded, as if it had never existed to begin with. The classroom before her was remarkably cheerful, overflowing with energy. She lifted her right hand to her forehead, snapping into the pose of a salute. Rimi's greeting resounded throughout the classroom. In the classroom fell a silence as death itself. Class had not started yet, so the room was about half full, but everyone that was looking her way was visibly puzzled. And for good reason. Nobody in this class, no, nobody in school knew who she was. And for that very reason, Rimi had to make sure to first draw everyone's attention. She drew her D-sword, and yet not a soul reacted. Technique. The sword, with blades arranged like inflexible feathers, was still a delusion. It was visible to no one. And through the memory technique. For her purposes, however, that was enough. Go forth, my delusion. She fired her thoughts at the eyes of those gazing at her. Then, as if it had somehow been planned beforehand, everyone blinked in unison. And then, all at once, the room's frozen atmosphere thawed. Rimi looked around the room once more, and then a smile formed on her face.
おはよう、咲畑。
おーっす。
リミ、朝っぱらから声大きすぎ。
もっと静かに入ってこいよな。
One after another, each student spoke to her like they had always known her, even though until mere seconds ago they had never seen her before. But it was different now. Rimi had planted delusions into them, delusions that soon attained mutual recognition. Recognition that Sakihata Rimi is a student at Suimei Academy and is a member of Class 2C. 2 days prior, she had tested this trick on Nishijo Takumi, Taku, but it had proven to be not very effective. As a result, she had been worrying how exactly it would unfold when she tried it here. But it seemed her anxiety had been unfounded. After seeing the smiles of her chattering classmates, she heaved a sigh of relief. She recalled her D-sword, then approached an empty seat from the vacant row in the back of the room. This desk was another delusion she had created. She placed her bag down, but rather than sitting, she turned to face the boy approaching her.
よ、
Yo, Rimi.
Hey, Miss Me, Daisuke. Misumi Daisuke. Misumi Daisuke. Rimi spoke his name 3 times to ensure her certainty. Why'd you say my name 3 times? And my whole name at that? I just felt like it, Daichin.
大地
Misumi was Taku's friend. In addition to being quite handsome, he clearly put care into the way he dressed. Rimi did not know how his friendship with Taku had come to be. Perhaps Takumi was responsible, fabricating his friendship through delusions. Or perhaps Misumi and Taku truly had formed a genuine friendship on their own, with no outward interference. The cause mattered not. All that mattered was that he and Taku were friends. Rimi's delusion had already implanted fresh memories within him.
タクは
Where's Taku? He's not here yet. Then again, is today one of his days he's supposed to be?
来る日か
Pretty sure, yeah. Leave it to his babysitter to be on top of things. I don't think I could ever wrap my head around that guy's schedule. Rimi wore a strained smile. It was a smile formed from feelings of guilt. Everyone's memories had been altered with delusions. This would remain Rimi's secret, and no one else would suspect a thing. Those around her would act friendly with her. However, nothing could change the fact that these relationships had been crafted from falsehoods. She had thought that she had become completely accustomed to loneliness by now. But by placing herself in this classroom, she was subjecting herself to desolation stronger than before. Standing in the center of a dimly lit room, Sakihara Rimi hung her head, remaining deathly still. The room's owner, Nishijo Takumi, Taku, was not currently present. He had not locked the door before he left, so Rimi had been easily able to enter. She checked the time on her cell phone. It was nearly 10 p.m. Is Taku still at Scramble Crossing? If she had been able, she would have helped him straight away. She had already attempted to once before, but the closest she had gotten to Scramble Crossing, the denser the crowd had become, and eventually she had been rendered unable to move. In the end, the Esper Boys show had concluded before she reached O-Front, and then, that was when she heard Takumi's voice. He pleaded with her to return Nanami's hand. It was not often that Takumi would ask Rimi for a favor. Nozomi had kidnapped Nanami, and they were currently subjecting her to all manner of torture. Takumi had been able to locate her using his mind-reading abilities. As she and Nanami had been acquainted in the past, hearing this news broke Rimi's heart. A cardboard box sat on the sofa. Contained within it was a cell phone, a petite bangle, and Nanami's severed hand. The sight left Rimi at a loss for words. Concern, anguish, and sorrow overwhelmed her. All at once, memories of her own past hardships flashed through her mind. Forcefully biting her lip, Rimi stared at the hand for a few moments. And then, with a deep breath, she gently closed the lid of the box, sealed it with duct tape, and left the room with the package in tow. Rimi took out her cell phone and connected to the One Seg television broadcasting service. The events at Scrambled Crossing had been on the news earlier, so she tuned into it, hoping to confirm something. But when the channel came on, it was in the midst of a commercial break, which must have meant that they were not broadcasting live anymore. In other words, Taku must not have been at Scrambled Crossing anymore. Knowing this, Rimi reluctantly returned to the hospital room she shared with Takumi. The lights were off. The room was as pitch black as when she had left it. The bed was empty, as Takumi was sitting in his wheelchair instead, something that Rimi had become accustomed to. Do you have Nanami's hand? Yeah, I brought it with me. Rimi opened the box and presented it to Takumi. Thank you. Can it still be reattached? We can fix this, can't we? I don't know. But this hospital does have a cryopreservation facility. Of course, freezing it would be better than nothing, but there was no guarantee that it could ever be returned to her. That was what his eyes conveyed to her. It'll be fine. We'll fix this, and she'll get her hand back. I know it. Rimi boldly declared this with a positive flair. I believe, with all my heart, that we'll get it back to her. But first, I've got to get her out of there. I don't believe her life is in danger. There's no need to be so hasty. Well, don't you seem pretty calm about all this? Sorry, just forget I said that. More importantly, do you know where Taku is right now? He was brought to this hospital and is currently asleep in the psychiatric ward. Are you serious? Rimi's eyes widened and she immediately burst out of the room. Visiting hours had long since ended, forcing Rimi to conceal the sound of her footsteps as she traversed the dim hallways. She knew that both Nozomi and the Cosmic Church of the Divine Light were among the hospital's staff, and she could not afford to attract any unwanted attention. Following a long and arduous trek, she arrived at the room that Takumi had informed her of. Upon inspecting her surroundings to ensure she would not be seen, she slowly opened the door. The room was pure white, the entirety providing not even the slightest hint of warmth. Rimi silently approached the bed in the center of the room. Taku lay there, sleeping deeply, his forehead beaded with sweat, his eyebrows were furrowed, and a moan would occasionally escape his lips. Rimi reached out towards Taku's cheek and gently caressed it. Unable to withhold her emotions any longer, she whispered that into his ear. Dude, I'm fucking starving. He went to go right past me, but just before he did, he put his hand on my shoulder. I can't keep up with this anymore. Rest up to you, dude. Shit. With a sigh of exasperation, he left the hospital room. Leaving me alone like this wasn't fair. Ayase hadn't even shown a hint of interest in Mizumi-kun leaving. It was almost like she was pretending he had never even been here in the first place. She was always like this, always so detached from everything. It felt like I was looking at someone fundamentally different from normal people. You created it, did you not? The flower bed, back then. That is how I realized that you have already awakened. I'm not a gigolo-maniac. Gigolo what? A gigolo-maniac? Oh, I heard it from Aisena. Aisena? Her. I see. I have met her only once. She too is a Black Knight of Glacial. Black Knights of Glacial and Gigolomaniacs. Did they mean the same thing? Either way, I can't do it. I couldn't even get a D sword. You must overcome the divine punishment done unto you. Then and only then shall the sword be summoned. Divine punishment? Suffering. An eruption of mental overload. What lies beyond the gate to the heart. Or perhaps mental torture. There are many ways one may put it. I've already suffered through so much. Even now, I was still suffering. I was the laughingstock of Japan. The police thought I was a murderer. Shogun and Yua were terrorizing me left and right. And everything with Nanami. I was once in a mental hospital. This is a story from when I was a child. Oh, yeah. I already knew. I'd seen it online. But why was she suddenly bringing it up? I was there for just under 5 years. My mind was weakened greatly. That was why I attacked. I attacked everything around me and, at the same time, myself. Ayase's voice was a faint murmur. The girl that sat in front of me wearing pastel pajamas and tracing the creases on the sheets with her fingertip showed no signs of the strength she'd once had at the concert. The Ayase, the Fess from back then, had she even been real? I often broke windows. I was a problem child. A faint smile formed on her lips. Those shards of broken glass, I could always vaguely see it there. See what? A sword. But I knew it was not for many years. The time I learned it to be a D-sword was around 4 years after I was admitted to the facility. Before then, I always did as I pleased. But one day, every single employee in the facility was replaced all at once. I was tortured in countless ways for many months. And when my heart and mind were on the verge of breaking, I heard the voice of the greater will. And from that moment, I could finally summon it. Torture? It was divine punishment. Obtaining the power to defeat wicked hearts requires the purification of a wicked heart itself. So basically, she was telling me I needed to suffer more, otherwise I would never get a sword. If that was the case, then fuck that. I didn't want to experience any more pain. I'd already broken down over and over again. I just wanted to be left alone. At my wit's end, I felt the urge to scream and shout, but Ayase's voice didn't allow me to. It is all a divine revelation. They should have already assembled in Shibuya, the 7 Black Knights. Next is only for them to awaken. If we do not hurry, the world will be brought to ruin by the machinations of Glacio. What is it? I was thinking of heading back to my parents' house now, actually. Now? That's kind of sudden. It shouldn't take more than a half an hour to get there on foot. And, I want you to come with me. As I made that request, I was so nervous I felt my heart would burst out of my chest. I was even somewhat surprised that those words had managed to come out of my mouth at all. Asking someone for something, it was like I'd never been able to do that before now. You don't mean... Rimi fell deep in thought, her expression looking troubled about something. Is this like the build-up to me being introduced to your parents? I couldn't help but gape at the ridiculous statement Rimi had just blurted out. If so, I don't really think I'm ready for that. No, that's not what I mean. Suddenly, a high-pitched sound pierced my ears, one that sounded almost like a woman's scream. Ah! A strong gust of wind swept over the rooftop. The air trembled. My vision was overwhelmed by a blinding sheet of deep crimson. With no idea what had just happened, I turned my face to the light. And when I looked upon the top of the container house, there she stood. I, Senna, D-sword in hand. The source of the light was her D-sword, glimmering against the sky. But something was strange. When I'd seen it before, Senna's D-sword emitted a blue glow. The sound vanished. The wind stopped. I need an answer, now. Her voice was sharp, her glare cold, her eyes glistened with unmistakable animosity. Were you the bastard who wrote this? As she spoke, she thrust out a piece of paper with IR2 scribbled on it. My essay, for some reason, it was all scrunched up. Why did Senna have that? Why was Senna here? Illegal trespassing, those words popped into my head, immediately followed by the realization that she searched my room. But what for? I said I need an answer. I did. Why do you want to know? Takumi-san! Next came the sound of Kozupi's inner voice. She was behind Senna. She was clinging to Senna's legs, and her face was peeking out from behind them. She had an urgent look on her face as she looked to me. Run away! Huh? Right as Kozupi screamed, Senna left from the roof. She held the sword high and... Rimi yanked my arm and I fell backward. I quickly looked back up and then saw the place I had been standing only moments prior. Senna's sword had hollowed out the floor of the rooftop. It had such an insane destructive power, such tremendous sharpness that it didn't even feel real. The impact had been great enough to destroy the concrete, and yet the sword didn't have a scratch on it. Weren't these swords supposed to be things people couldn't see, let alone touch? A certain term crossed my mind. Real boot. Her sword had been real booted. Through the mutual recognition of the four people here, Senna's D-sword had gone from her delusion to reality. It was now a great sword that could cut down a person for real. If Rimi hadn't pulled me away in time, I would have been bisected from head to toe by that beautiful sword of hers. It would have been an instant death. Shivers ran down my entire body. Just now, Senna had unmistakably tried to kill me. Why? My head was overwhelmed with confusion. The two of us had been eating garigari-kuns the other day. Kozupi had been there with us. It was true that our relationship wasn't far enough for me to call us friends, and that even back then, Senna had been acting scary the whole time. But even so, she shouldn't have hated me enough to suddenly come after me with a D-sword. I'll kill you. Senna raised her head. She glared at me even more intensely than before. Her movements were incredibly fast, in spite of the fact that she was holding a gigantic sword. She kicked off the ground like she was starting a 500-meter dash. The tip of her sword scraped against the ground as she brandished it. Closing the distance between us, she raised the weapon above her hand. In that instant, my instincts worked out exactly what kind of situation I was in. She was serious. Senna was deathly serious.
As I lay face up in a total heap, I let out a shriek. I couldn't run away. None of this made any sense. Getting a game over like this, desperately running away from Shogun, yet surprise attacked by Senna as a result of it. It was far too ridiculous. Far too sudden. I didn't want this. I didn't want to die. I really didn't want to die. Right then, a single silhouette leapt above me and landed between me and Senna. When I looked to see who it was, I realized it was Rimi. She stretched her arms out wide to bar the way of the approaching girl. Was she putting her life on the line just to shield me? Move! But if she did that, she was gonna die. I didn't want that.
先畑さんには気をつけて。
Nishijo... Whatever. Suddenly, what Kozubi had said before reappeared in my mind. Pale light leaked past Rimi's outstretched arms.
先畑さんはよくわかんないのら。
Rimi,
タクに
don't you dare lay a finger on Taku. Unifying the overflowing light, she placed her arms together. The air warped and shook. Coming seemingly from thin air, feathers of shining light burst around Rimi and danced around the surrounding air. And then, what appeared in her hands. What the hell? Effortlessly blocked the fierce downward swing of Senna's gigantic sword.
タクを
And don't you dare torment him like this. It was all too graceful to be called a sword, all too imperial. Enough to be easily mistaken for the wings of an angel. Then I realized a certain fact, that she, Sakihara Rimi, was a gigalomaniac. Senna's eyes shot wide open at the sight of my D-sword. Her blow had been fairly quick, but stopping it had been hardly any trouble. Our D-swords resonated with one another, releasing a shrill cry that enveloped the two of us. I could feel Aoi-san's negative emotions, her fury, her hatred, coming forth through her D-sword.
先畑さんもギガロマニアックスだったのら。
Behind me, Taku sank to the floor in shock. In that state, it would be impossible to get him to escape at this point, so I had no choice but to deal with Aoi-san somehow. Do you know what exactly he did? The IR2 formula. I'm fully aware. I cut Aoi-san short. I didn't want Taku to even hear its name. Fine. Then I'll... If you force Taku to awaken, this will end in an even bigger disaster. Then I'll kill him before that. Even if you try, you will never be able to. Aoi-san was incredibly aggressive, but she fundamentally misunderstood how a D-sword should have been used. Her attacks were far too straightforward, far too impulsive. Treating her sword as just a simple sword would translate only to a little kid swinging around a tree branch. There was a distinct difference between someone who had properly instructed on how to wield it and an ordinary high school girl. Dealing with her would be child's play. Nishijo has to die. He brought a goddamn calamity into this world. Aoi-san had been consumed by hatred. Her negative delusions were clearly visible to me. Pouring out from within her, they transformed into a hulking black miasma and forcefully pierced my dead spots. Aoi-san couldn't have been doing it consciously. However, they wouldn't normally be visible to just anyone she faced. This was a characteristic unique to gigalomaniacs. When facing another human, it was possible to make that surge of emotions visible, and with that, you could lay all their emotions bare. I focused my attention on images that were forcefully projected in and eroding my mind. The emotions that fueled Aoi-san's hatred,
her memories. I could see them. Her pain, her sorrow, her memories of the past that tormented her. And using those memories, I glared at Ai-san and formed a delusion. I fabricated a fictitious scene that would twist the knife in her wounds. A shudder ran through her body, slowly lowering her sword. She then froze completely. Her expression showed how she was clearly shaken. Her eyes were empty. She was no longer looking at me, nor reality. She was now inside the delusion that I had fabricated. But I had just given her a cue. The rest of the story was her own making, guided by her own obsession movie. And now, Ai-san could no longer fight.
それで、それで。
I jumped. I could feel a voice reverberating within my mind.
セナさんの心をぐちゃぐちゃにした咲畑さんはその後どうするの？殺しちゃうのかな？
I looked over toward the container house.
もしもね、殺すって言うんなら
A sword of many facets. An overwhelming sense of corrosive misfortune. A pure, unadulterated savagery. And a destructive nobility. It was Orihara-san's D-sword.
咲畑さんのこと悪い人リストに入れちゃうならリストにね入った人は
Upon lifting her D-sword high up in the air, Orihara-san smiled cheerfully at me.
コズピーが皆殺しにするの私は
I... Kill them! All of a sudden, Taku raised his voice to a shriek. Both Senna and Kosufi are our enemies. They were our enemies all along. That's why you gotta kill them, Rimi. I don't want to die. Taku, just be quiet for a minute.
リスト入り
Orihara-san twisted her lips into a smile.
二人とも殺しちゃうから
Huh? It came like a storm. The sheer speed at which she charged at me was simply inhuman. I was taken by surprise. Orihara-san's D-sword came down on me like a stake being pounded into the earth. I immediately jumped back, but the impact was so strong I was blown back anyway. I somehow managed to land on my feet. Next came a horizontal swing. I tried to deflect it with my sword. But I failed. I ended up taking the blow head on. My arms went completely numb.
死ね死ね
Orihara-san charged at me with unbelievable strength. I had no room to counterattack. How was she so adept at fighting? Despite all her small frame, Orihara-san swung her giant D-sword around with no issue at all. Her footwork was wild and unsteady. Each step she took was incredibly unstable. Her feet were barely touching the ground. Rather than she being the one swinging the sword, it felt as if the sword was swinging her.
咲畑さんもたつきさんも悪い人だったんだね二人とも殺します
I won't let you kill Taku! As I desperately deflected Orihara-san's blows, just as I had done before with Senna, I focused on the negative emotions pouring out from within her. The image that appeared in the back of my mind was a mirror. Wasting no time, I sent that delusion into Orihara-san's dead spots. Orihara-san's movements came to a sudden halt. Tears began to pour from her eyes. I let out a sigh of relief. I had to get Taku out of here while I still could. That was when I noticed. I couldn't see Ai-san anywhere. I looked all around the rooftop. and saw her standing at the very edge of it. Hi, son! I frantically took off running, but before I could reach her, her body slowly drifted forward, and then she disappeared over the edge. The sound of something crashing into the ground. The sound of something smashing against the earth. I heard it faintly in the distance. Had she died? Had Aoi-san died? Because of that delusion I'd showed her? No, I didn't mean to. Huh? A fierce blast of wind came from behind me. The impact was tremendous. It felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I felt my brain being shaken around inside my skull. Unable to brace myself beforehand, I was sent flying. I hit the ground hard, and a sharp pain shot through my entire body. I hadn't been cut in any way, but I had taken an extremely hard blow from her fiendish D-sword. My vision was intensely blurry. I tried to get up, but I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't tell who I was anymore. I might have suffered a light concussion. I tried desperately to look up. Orihara-san was staggering around, cradling her head in her hands. She shook it violently from side to side. Had the delusion I'd showed her made her lose sight of who she was?
私は誰なの？
She was moving toward Taku. She was going to kill him. Why didn't you run away? Why are you still here? I had to help him. I closed my fists, but my D-sword wasn't in my hand. I had accidentally let go of it when I had been hit by the blast earlier. It was lying on the ground a short distance away from me.
死んじゃえ死んじゃえ死んじゃえ死んじゃえ死んじゃえ
Taku was crying out for my help. I have to save him. I won't let anyone kill him. But I'm too far away. I won't make it. Orihara-san had already raised her D-sword. Taku would die in an instant. He had sunk to his knees and could no longer move. In less than a second, he would literally be crushed by her D-sword. I have to save him. No matter what I do, I won't make it. Numerous voices surged within me. My thoughts grew erratic. Countless me's pierced with their gazes from inside my head. Countless me's whispered their mouths. The whispers continued to cascade, pooling together into a violent flood of voices, each one gnawing away at any and all reason I had. I desperately stood up, but I couldn't do any more than that. I won't make it. I won't let you kill him. I gritted my teeth. Taku is going to die. Kill her. Kill Orihara Kozue. If I can protect him, then nothing else matters. No, it's not like that. Kill her. Wouldn't it be better if Taku died here? Kill Orihara Kozue. Kill Nishijo Takumi. That's the wish of both Sakihara Rimi and Takumi, isn't it? You're wrong. You're wrong. Taku, I'll... Before I knew it, the D-sword was in my hands. It was supposed to be on the ground, yet I was holding it. I'll... No, that's not good. I felt the sensation of gouging flesh. I didn't know how I'd close the distance between me and Orihara-san. When I looked, I saw that the D-sword I'd been holding in my hands had sunk deep into her delicate back. I was resisting a will of some kind. I had no intention of killing her. Or was this really my own will? My true nature? Orihara-san looked back at me with an empty expression on her face. This is wrong. I don't want to kill her. If I don't stop, she'll... My D-sword wriggled and squirmed. As if it had a will of its own, it trembled with the joy of taking a life, the delight of bathing in blood. I frantically shook my head in denial. My D-sword's wings, its fangs, creaked loudly as they bored into Orihara-san's back. Even now, it was trying to gnaw and tear her apart.
ダメだってば。
I tried pulling it out, but I couldn't. I couldn't move. I couldn't even let go of my sword. Orihara-san coughed up blood, and when it landed on my sword, dyeing it red. As if it was a pair of wings spreading. It twisted itself deep into Orihara-san's body and tore her apart. Blood burst into the air, and the petite girl who had been alive just a second ago transformed into nothing but mere lumps of flesh. Crimson, illusionary feathers poured down around me.
違う。私はこんなの望んでない。
Seeking desperately for someone to save me, I looked around. Taku was staring at me as if he'd seen a monster.
私は殺すつもりなんてなかった。殺すつもりなんてなかったのに。
But I killed them anyways.